Ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying this to an empty audience, but have you ever told someone to do something and then you realise that you didn't actually tell them to do something and it was all in your head? Because, well, that happened this evening, and unfortunately, due to me thinking I told somebody to do something, but actually it all happened in my head, some technical difficulties happened and we lost the first 20 minutes of the Q&A. And here we are at the end of the evening, a lot drunker, and with a lot less of an audience. That doesn't matter. But we're going to do the first half of the Q&A again. Just for you, the viewers on YouTube. Thanks for simulating. So we'll kick off in a bit.
My name is Simon Lawrence, and I'm going to be interviewing the great Darcy here with his new comic, The Wasteland Beyond the Wall.
Hello, I am Darcy, who was just mentioned.
And as Darcy I'm already talking, mentioned at the beginning, we're having to redo this bit again, so it's going to be weird because about halfway through we're going to be quite sober.
Yeah.
This is the end of the night, we're actually quite drunk. So
this is happening, you're seeing this at the beginning, as the beginning of the video, with us quite pissed.
Yeah.
But at least we've rehearsed most of the questions, so it's going to be a lot more succinct and a lot less waffly.
But might be.
However, suddenly halfway through the video, the camera angle is going to change, and we're going to suddenly be a lot soberer than we are now.
More mature.
But just roll with it. Just roll with it.
It's two parallel universes.
Just like the comic.
See what I did there?
Yes. See, so, this is already so much better than what we did earlier.
Yeah. Deja vu. Here we go again.
Yes.
So, without any spoilers, as much as possible, please tell us a little bit about The Wasteland Beyond the Wall.
And you see, this is where the quality instantly jumps up, because earlier I was a bit nervous, and I just read it off of Facebook. But right now, for YouTube exclusive, and the three people who were late, I will do this off the top of my head. So The Wasteland Beyond the Wall is a comic book series by me and my partner Molly's production company, Creative Vandalism. And it's a comic book series set in an alternate universe where the world is ruled by an American fascist superstate that controls the entire continent, called the First United Republic of America, which is abbreviated as the Führer. The comic is set in Mexico, and it follows the story of a young female gunslinger who has abilities, and along her travels through Mexico she will meet the elusive prisoner 315905.
Great character.
Very good character. And together they will embark on an odyssey of violence, conspiracy and self-discovery, facing horrors such as cannibalistic bandits, drug peddling cartels, and the might of the Führer's military.
Can I just say, considering you were drunk, that was actually quite impressive. That's good.
What can I say?
Right. So my next question is, in a world of online, why do you think the printed comic is still important? And also, why did you choose to print it as a comic and not just keep it online?
Well, the thing is, I am actually going to be doing an online version, which is going to be available to read on my website once that is up and running, for free. Every time an issue is done, you'll be able to look at it on our website, read it in its entirety for free, and if you like it, you can purchase a copy for yourself, because the thing is, and me and Molly were having this conversation a couple of weeks ago, when you go to somebody's house for the first time that you've just met, and you go into their living room and You look at their bookshelves to see what books and CDs and vinyl and DVDs they've got on display, and you learn something about them. And if you go to somebody's house and there's just nothing like that, then, well, they're obviously just a boring cunt. And, you know, thank you for the clap. So, if somebody reads my comic book online and they like it, if they're passionate about comic books and the medium and supporting independent creators, they'll buy a copy to stick it on their shelves to display to their friends coming over to show that they have a personality.
Well, I like that. I know you're not a huge fan, in the deja vu moment, because you said this earlier, that you're not a huge fan of Forbidden Planet, but I actually like Forbidden Planet. Going down there and sometimes just sifting through new comics, seeing what's available. Not necessarily just Forbidden Planet, Orbital as well as Leicester Square, which I love, great place. I think there's something wonderful about that discovery where online you're just literally scrolling through, it's kind of boring. There's something about going into a comic bookshop and just flicking through and suddenly you see a page that captures your attention. Do you think that's part of it?
Oh, definitely, and I will be trying to get Wasteland Beyond the Wall in comic book shops. I know you mentioned earlier in the first version of this interview, I did slag off Forbidden Planet, but that was simply because they're fucking overpriced. And their comic book section is an underground maze where it's impossible to find anything, and to be honest, a lot of the decent stuff they don't even stock. But I will be trying to get my work in some other comic book shops, as you mentioned, Orbital and Gosh Comics as well, which is my go-to comic book shop because I'm a big manga collector, and I think they've got a really good selection of manga. So I definitely agree with you that is definitely part of it, going to a comic book shop. And especially if they're a comic book shop that showcases independent creators like Gosh and Orbital. And if I get my work in there, it'll be in the indie section and people will go there and they'll be like, oh, what self-published authors?
Something new.
Yeah, exactly. What self-published authors have got their work in here and they'll have a flip through and hopefully they'll find, if I get my work in there, they'll find this.
So moving on to the themes in the Wasteland Beyond the Wall. They're pretty, well, they seem to me quite post-apocalyptic, which seems to be having a resurgence right now, not just in comic book form, but also in movies. There seems to be a lot of post-apocalyptic films being made. I just wondered what you think about that, if you were influenced by that, and also, I would add, are you doing that post-apocalyptic thing of you're actually writing about today, the times that we live in, using the post-apocalyptic theme as a tool?
Well, I mean, you said it yourself there. I think that's why post-apocalyptic fiction has had a certain resurgence in recent years, because of the current political climate. But in terms of it being post-apocalyptic, the thing is, I purposely, when I went to writing this, when I first came up with the idea, it was very inspired by the kind of Mad Max post-nuclear dystopian future that we also see in popular video games like Fallout, for example. And I kind of wanted to stay away from that. Initially, it was that, but the idea, as it went on, kind of evolved, and I went on to making it kind of a landscape that has become a wasteland due to industrial meddling and whatnot, and that's kind of the angle I wanted to go in. But
so not so futuristic, more
futuristic.
Near future or
near future. Well, of course, it takes place in an alternate reality where the world is controlled by this American fascist superstate. But in it being an alternate reality, I've kind of made it so that the fascist superstate has been in power since the 90s, and America has been this Nazi republic since the 90s, instead of it being a recent thing like it is in real life.
Actually, moving on to that, so there is a wall in the Wasteland Beyond the Wall. I mean, there has to be a wall. It's in the title.
Yeah.
And that's actually on the Mexican border. So my question to you is that a direct reference to Donald Trump and his wall?
And of course, as we already did this Q&A about 2 hours ago, you already know my surprise plot twist.
I do, but let's pretend you're saying it for the first time.
And I will do it so much more dramatically than I did
Because
before.
I was genuinely shocked the first time when he told me this, because I did genuinely think he'd seen the whole thing with Donald Trump at the wall and thought, oh, that's a cool idea, I'll make that part of my post-apocalyptic future, what happens next after Donald Trump builds his wall. But actually what happened was...
Here comes the plot twist. I came up with the idea in 2014.
Mind blown.
So yeah, I came up with the idea for this in 2014 when I was in college. I was doing my A-levels, and I've got proof of this because for my A-level coursework, I was doing graphics and illustration, and I did a 2-page sample of basically what would become the Wasteland Beyond the Wall. And originally, you're going to meet a character about near the end of this called Cypher. So he's this cybernetically enhanced super soldier. And originally what I wanted to do is have a comic book series where he was the main character. And back in 2014 for my A-level graphics and illustration coursework, I did a 2-page sample of what would be the Cypher comic book. And I'm actually going to add a lot more extra information to this version 2 Q&A. Because originally it was going to be set in this post-World War III world, and World War III was of course going to be a nuclear war. And in the aftermath of World War III, the world is going to be ruled by the winners, who are America, who are this fascist superstate. And in part of their control of the world, they start creating cybernetic super soldiers, one of which is Cypher. And in the plot of the comic book, Cypher was going to be captured by this resistance and turned to a good guy. And then the series was going to be about him after World War IV, after they've defeated the Nazis, and about him fighting crime in this kind of cyberpunk mega judge.
I like how you skip World War III there. You just
no, World War III is the backstory.
Everyone goes on about World War III. Let's skip to World War IV.
But in this story, after World War III, there are areas that were of course hit by nuclear weapons, and these have been quarantined for the radiation and whatnot. And there are these big border walls that have been built by the American Nazis. And beyond it is this kind of Mad Max Fallout-esque wasteland. And in my idea, I was going to have the story of Cypher, and then in the sequel, he was going to travel into one of these quarantine zones, and it was going to take on this Western vibe. And he was going to meet this character called Clint, who is this grizzled old Clint Eastwood-esque.
Clint Eastwood.
There are 2 kinds of people in this world. And he was going, due to the radiation, he was going to have psychic powers, and it was going to be this Western story of Cypher going through this post-nuclear wasteland with Clint. And that's kind of where the idea for Wasteland Beyond the Wall came, because I was very much influenced by kind of ultra-violent grindhouse films at the time. And one of the ones I watched at the time was Machete. And
tell us more about that, because I love that film, Machete. And if you've not seen that film, I highly recommend you see it. It's fantastic.
But of course it's set in Mexico, and it's about this ex-federale, which is the Mexican federal police, basically the FBI. And it's this ultra-violent film about him fighting for Mexican border rights, basically. And I saw that, and I thought, I like the idea of Mexico. I was also watching Breaking Bad at the time, which I didn't bring up in the previous Q&A, which of course had a lot of things to do with the Mexican drug cartel, and I just really liked a lot of the iconography of that, and I thought...
Those desert shots
Yeah.
are great, aren't they? Breaking Bad.
Indeed.
Fantastic.
And that's basically what inspired this, because I thought that kind of post-nuclear Mad Max wasteland, no. Because...
if you don't mind me saying, you have... some long shots in it. We'll talk about this later. The sort of editing, if you like, of the comic. But you have these sort of full-page panels where it's just like one character, and you can see that one character in a lot of desert. That kind of reminds me of not just of Breaking Bad, but of like spaghetti westerns,
which is another big influence. If you could not tell from the good, the bad, and the ugly music playing earlier. But yeah, I was kind of very influenced by that, and I thought the whole post-nuclear, post-apocalyptic wasteland was just a really overdone trope. So I thought, you know what? One, let's do it in Mexico, because machete, and it can be about cypher fighting drug cartels. And I thought, you know what? No, let's have that backstory, and let's introduce this psychic gunslinger character.
And I think that was a great choice.
And we'll have it a story about her, and then she maybe encounters Cypher later in the story. And then, of course, in 2016, when I was just finished my first year at university, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and make a comic book, because with the university work, I haven't got enough time to make a film, so I'm just going to do a comic book, because I'm okay at drawing.
So is that really how it came about? Were you more wanting to do films then, and you just thought,
yeah, pretty much,
I can get a comic book done faster?
Pretty much. Well, because I wanted to be this post-apocalyptic thing, and I'm not going to be able to go and shoot on a desert and make all these kind of gun props and all these Mad Max shoulder pads and whatnot, so I thought it was a comic. And in 2016 I did a 16-page prototype, and I decided to make this Clint Eastwood psychic gunslinger character. Instead of being a grizzled, middle-aged man, I decided to turn him into a teenage girl, because I thought that was just a bit more interesting as a character, and I could give her a more interesting backstory.
Tell me a bit more about that now, actually. That was a question I was going to ask later, and I did ask in the previous one, in the alternate universe. Basically, why did you choose to have a female heroine as opposed to this sort of male butch guy he had superpowers and everything, and you've given it to this kind of female gunslinger instead?
I mean, partially. I mean, it's funny because we had a big argument about this the other day, because I'm woke as fuck. And I thought, you know what, I've got a lot of grizzled old male characters. I've got a lot of grizzled old male characters in this comic book, which you'll be introduced to later on. And I thought, no, I think this main character should be, one, somebody young, and two, I thought, let's make her a girl, because why not, you know? Hit that diversity.
And she's badass.
And she is badass.
She's great. One of the things, I remember when you were writing this, you were sending me kind of copies of certain pages when they were done. And one of the things that really blew my mind about this was that you were both writing it and doing the art at the same time. What's that? Just to tell us, what's that like? You know, there's a lot of great comics out there. Most of them have been written by two people. You have either multiple artists, or you have one artist that they choose, and you have one great writer. For example, Neil Gaiman, you know, will sometimes work with one artist, or he'll work with multiple artists on something like Sandman. But you've done this all yourself. I mean, it's literally all your words and all your art. So.
Well,
tell us a bit about that.
Well, when I kind of talk about myself as an artist, I see myself mostly as a writer. And I mean, mentioned earlier the fact that I do film as well, and I also want to get into doing video games. And the thing is, what I like doing is telling stories, and I'm writing all the time, and I love writing. Because I'm a bit of a jack of all trades when it comes to media, you know, whatever story suits my script best, or whatever medium suits my script best, I kind of be like, oh, this will work well as a comic, this will work well as a video game, this will work well as a film. And like I said earlier about budget, you know, there's no way I could do this as a film with my current income. Or without some sufficient funding from Hollywood. But fuck Hollywood, and fuck the media industry, first of all. So I did this, I thought I'd do this as a self-published comic book, and I originally, when I first came up with the idea, I thought, I mean, I've got an A-level in graphics and illustration. I never pursued that, because I quite frankly find drawing incredibly boring. And I love writing, and I thought, I'm going to write this, I'm going to get someone else to draw it for me. But I just couldn't find anybody, so I thought, fuck it, I'll draw it myself, and I did.
I really love the art, and I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. Just give me questions.
I can edit that bit out.
I'll leave it in.
Yeah,
it'll be funny.
Well, yeah, I guess the next question is then, since you do everything, you're doing the writing and the art, what do you find more challenging, the writing or creating the artwork?
The artwork, definitely. Like I said, I like writing. I like sitting down and typing a script away or just outlining the story. And like in terms of time, I wrote the script for this in 2 weeks, whereas it took me 3 months to do the artwork for it. And like, in terms of the kind of production schedule of making this, I did half of it in the first month, and then as time went on, I kind of grew a bit tired of drawing and slowed down production.
Going forward, would you definitely still keep doing it all yourself?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
Now that you've got the style. And
I think if me and Molly do well with creative vandalism, and we manage to start getting in a bit of money and making it self-sufficient, then maybe I would look to trying to get some extra talent in to help us out. And if they wanted to illustrate a comic book for us, maybe a side comic book, not this one, just
because you've got your artistic.
Because I wouldn't want the art style change suddenly within the series, but I'd be very open to looking into that.
This is a very basic question, but I've got to ask it. And I did ask it in the alternate reality. Who are your comic book influences?
Well, as you can probably tell from my t-shirt,
because everyone's got to ask this question.
Akira. As I said earlier in the Q&A that you guys who are here and you looking at this on YouTube missed, I was very much a fringe comic book fan. Even 3 years ago when I first came up with the idea for this, I liked Marvel films, and I would say I'm a Marvel fan, but I've never picked up a Marvel comic.
Sacrilege.
But
No, it really doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong answer to that.
But
I just want to say that to all the nerds out there. I can say this now, I'm so wrong. No, but it doesn't matter, because the point is he's created this comic, and you have your influences, and whether it be film or comics or a little combination of both. And what can happen sometimes online on the internet is, people get very tribal. It's like, oh well, you haven't read the first issue of such and such a comic, and I must admit, I used to be one of those people. I was kind of a bit too nerdy, and I'd be like, what? You've not read that 32nd issue of this comic? And actually, as you get older, you realise it doesn't really matter, especially with creators. At the end of the day, you're influenced by what you're influenced by, whether it's music or comics or film. At the end of the day, if you create something that people enjoy, it doesn't really matter, I don't think, where the influences come from. It might be interesting for an interview like this, but it's not relevant really.
But to answer your question and make it relevant, but of course I'm wearing an Akira t-shirt. Akira's a big influence on this. When I actually decided to sit down after making the first one, think, no, I'm actually going to look at some comics, I got recommended a few things, and most of what I actually got into was mostly Japanese manga. A huge fan of Berserk, which has massively influenced the comic book, especially since doing the prototype. There are a lot of once the website's up and running, I will have the original prototype I did in 2016 on there. And if you read that and then look at this, you will see that there's definitely a lot of changes that I've made that are heavily influenced by Berserk, which, if you haven't read, is a fucking fantastic manga. But when it comes to Western comics, there isn't really anything that I've been influenced by, really. It's mostly film. Like I said, talking about the kind of Grindhouse revival act with Quentin Tarantino and Rodriguez, and then looking back at lots of old pulpy sci-fi films.
Well, that's what I want to quickly ask about in this first section is your comic has a lot of crossovers. It's got sci-fi, obviously Western is a huge element. You've even got supernatural elements there of people with abilities to change people's minds or telekinesis. Do you enjoy mashing up genres, and why have you included that in your comic?
Oh, I certainly do. And in terms of the visual aesthetic and the pacing and whatnot, I've been mostly influenced by westerns, especially spaghetti westerns, as was mentioned earlier, and just pulp sci-fi, really. And of course, when it comes down to the kind of psychic side of things, one of my main influences was actually H.P. Lovecraft, even though he's a racist cunt. you know, he is the inventor of cosmic horror, which has been a massive influence on the comic. And even though it may not be very apparent in the first few issues, those kind of themes will become very present as the series goes on. Which, as I don't know if this, because there is some footage from the original Q&A, which we will stick at the end. And somebody mentioned Cthulhu in the Mexican desert, and that may be a thing.
That was me. I did say, do we expect to see Cthulhu in the desert?
Something similar, maybe.
Excellent. I would love that personally, being a Lovecraft fan. So my final question for this section is, I kind of want to ask about the musical influences because, you know, reading this, being both a comic book fan but also a music fan, it comes across as very punk, and I like that. You know, even though there's no soundtrack to it, obviously it's a comic, they kind of felt like there was a kind of punk vibe to it, and I wondered, were you listening to any music as you wrote it? Did you have any like punk or rock influences?
I mean, in me and Molly's whole ethos when it comes to the way we run creative vandalism, we are punks, and our whole ethos is punk. That's why we're so independent and fuck publishers and fuck the media industry, blah blah blah. You know, because, you know, fuck capitalism, and it's sucking the soul out of the media industry and the whole way we're doing things.
And this is why you'll never be Marvel, right?
Exactly. But like the whole way we're doing things, it's like we're just doing it, we're funding it ourselves, we're publishing it ourselves, we're doing shit like this in our local pub.
Yeah.
You know, the whole way we do things is at its core punk. You know. In the alternate reality, when we did this before, you mentioned something about the fact that you could have this as a software where you could actually turn the page online. Oh yeah.
And you could actually hear the music as you turn the page, and you maybe have like a punk soundtrack. That's something you were interested in?
It wasn't actually a punk soundtrack, but I did mention, I don't know if this may actually have survived the recording, but in terms of like the digital release, one thing I plan on doing as once like the first story arc's wrapped up and we're hopefully making a bit more money to put more budget into things. But with a digital release, one thing I'm really looking forward to doing is doing a version of the comic book that's digital that you can download that actually has an integrated soundtrack. So it's not like just a downloadable PDF or anything, it's actually a bit of software that you download, and as you flick through the pages and as you turn the pages, the soundtrack is dynamic and will change depending on what's going on the page.
I love that idea. I think that's great. So we're going to wrap up this section. When we finish this section, it will cut to a section where we're both
a lot more sober.
A lot more serious and sober. But that's what you get with comics, folks, you know? It can change.
And that's what you get. And that's what you get with punks, is that things go wrong.
Exactly.
We have to redo things.
And also, I like that usually it's people starting off sober and getting drunker, whereas this way around, it's like they've seen us pissed and then suddenly we're sober.
Yeah.
So that might...
Yeah. Well, you see us pissed and then you see us slightly less pissed. I wouldn't say sober.
That's true. Anyway, thank you and enjoy section 2.
Yes, thank you.
That's pretty funny.
Amazing special effects man working with us in our films, the film side of things, for our web series that we'll be making with the money that we earn tonight on this.
Will that be a web series of The Wasteland Beyond the Wall? Or?
No, it's a complete separate project. It's I don't really know how to describe it really. It's a mix between, I guess, it's not, but for the nearest comparison I could probably make is it's a mix between The Mighty Boosh and Twin Peaks.
That sounds awesome.
It's set in Walthamstow. It's about a private investigator in Walthamstow who solves weird X-Files style mysteries.
If I could interrupt, it's like a sort of really shit, low-rent X-Files meets Spaced.
Yeah, that's
Low-rent X-Files meets Spaced.
That's another excellent comparison.
That also sounds great.
Weird shit going on. with a load of scuzzy, slightly inadequate people trying to solve it.
If the camera didn't pick that up.
Yeah.
No, the camera has somehow managed to get rid of all of the previous stuff, so because you didn't format the card.
Well, I thought you were doing that. I told you to do it before we left.
Oh, you did.
So that's your fault.
Is it okay now?
It's recording now.
Never mind. Well, I suspect you earlier, and we agreed on a panel that we could show everyone that wasn't too much of a spoiler.
Yeah.
Just think it'd be fun for people to show them a panel.
I mean, to be honest, I think most people who've bought a copy of
That's great.
through it.
Okay, well, let's just have a look at one anyway and talk us through from literally concept from your brain to the writing to the drawing to the printing to everything.
You know what? I'm actually really glad. I'm really glad that you picked this page because I didn't realise you were going to ask me to pick it apart, but now you do.
If you do have your comics, it's page 16. Even though
No, it's page. It's page. They're not numbered, but it is page 14 and 15.
14 and 15.
It is actually page 14 and 15.
Put it on the screen.
We don't.
Hold it up. I don't know if you can do a zoom in.
It's the one
Zoom
before
as much as I
the
can.
big. It's the one before the big page that is just one panel. It's the one
Yeah.
before that.
One before that, if you want to look at that.
Yes, Eleanor, you do have to get it out.
So we're going to look at this one here, where the guys turn up.
So this is no spoilers happen here, so I can talk about it freely.
So we have the Mortal Knights, and we have
At a gas station.
yeah.
Or so a petrol station. I called it a gas station in the comic book because they're American, so they call it a gas station. It's a petrol station because we're in Britain.
And then the authorities turn up.
Yeah, so I insert, because of course I did the 16-page prototype in 2016. This scene did not exist in that, and I thought to pad it out a bit, I would stick a random scene in to kind of flesh out the villains. And instead of having them doing villainous things, I just have them doing everyday things because I thought I would write, even though they are horrible cunts, I would write them as protagonists in this scene. And even though they are murdering cannibals who are massively racist, I thought the Führer aren't really much of a presence in the first chapter, so I needed to have more of them in it, and I needed to make them a bit more villainous. So I thought I would have a scene where you see the villains of this chapter interacting with the kind of overarching villains, and have them kind of be the underdog protagonists in this scene.
Almost which is worse of the two villains, the authority or the bandits?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, in regards to when I've been writing chapters after this and introducing more present villains who are going to be like a villain that will actually be like a main character, like your Darth Vader type character. Whenever I write a scene for them, I don't write them as the villain, I write them as the protagonist in that scene.
Okay, so just take us through how you would create a page then like this.
So, film techniques here. You've got your establishing wide shot, which is drawn nice and big, so you linger on it for a while and soak the scene in. And then I've kind of got quick cuts of the dialogue, there's your standard kind of reverse shot, shot, reverse shot, that's the term. And I've got them just kind of doing menial things. They're out in the wasteland, they're replacing a tyre on their car. And then, what do you know, some Nazis rock up and just take the piss out of them for being cannibals. I don't know what else to say about it.
That's good, yeah, it's interesting. So we have time for a couple more questions, and then we're going to open it up to you guys. So I kind of have to ask this question for anyone here or anyone watching. As this is your first proper published comic, what advice do you have for new comic writers?
Just fucking do it, I guess. Even if your art's shit and you're writing shit, just have a go. And I'm a big fan of B-movies. I mean, B-movies are a big influence on the comic book tonally and whatnot. And a lot of the films that have kind of influenced me, like we were talking about, I mean, if you look at Robert Rodriguez's career when he first started, was just him doing it out of his own pocket and whatnot. And
Same with Tarantino, I think, as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With his first film.
and another big influence on me, which actually got me into starting creative vandalism in terms of its whole punk ethos, was actually Peter Jackson, director of Lord of the Rings. If you look at his early career, the first film he did was a shitty sci-fi action B-movie called Bad Taste, which is one of my favourite films.
Amazing film.
One of my favourite films of all time, and he just did that out of his own pocket. He did everything himself. He made all the camera cranes and steady cams and whatnot just out of timber. He did all the special effects himself.
I would argue that that is punk.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, DIY.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And he just did it, and it was just him and his mates from work doing it, and it took them 4 years to make that film, just shooting it on weekends, and I mean, I guess that's kind of what, I mean, it's taken me a lot less time, but you know, this is just what I do in my spare time when I'm not working here, and a lot of my friends who work here help me out with it, so, you know, it's kind of the
I think that's great advice.
yeah,
Just do it.
just do it.
Yeah. And then the last question, Dan. Helps me with the this question. You know what this
Oh, I
question
know
is.
this.
You know this one. With all the bad language and excessive violence in this comic, what would your mother say if she was here?
Well, she is here. And quite frankly, I don't think she gives a shit. It's more the grandparents we're worried about, but thankfully they are not here and they will never see this.
But they might see it on YouTube.
No, they don't know how to work a computer, it's
Oh,
fine.
that's fine then. Well, I just want to say a massive thanks, but we're not finishing it here. I know that definitely some of you that I spoke to earlier have some questions. I'll come down with the microphone, or maybe actually you could just come up here because then you can be.
I can be checked.
On camera.
I mean, I think if you don't mind coming up, I think it'd be great for the.
If the
For
camera
us,
was.
the YouTubing, it'd be good. So, do you want to come up? I know you've got a question.
I can just talk. Don't worry, I can just talk.
We can all hear you.
We can all hear you.
Well, this seems to jump into a story. Are you going to do a pre-story of how we got to this situation where there is a fascist superstate, there is environmental degradation? Are you going to do a story backstory?
I am going to do a prequel, but not focusing on what you just asked.
Oh, right, okay.
The prequel is going to be more the prisoner's backstory and what is happening elsewhere in the world in the year before this takes place. It's going to be set in London.
And the other, it's a technical one. How long did this take?
Like I said earlier, the script only took me 2 weeks to write. But no, in 2016. Actually, no, probably 2017 by the time I got around to writing the script for this. But it took me 3 months to draw it.
Right.
If I got my head down and had a consistent output, it probably would have only taken me 2 months because I got half of it done in the first month, and then I kind of lost interest a bit and production slowed down a bit. So I went from doing 2 pages a day to doing 3 pages a week, which is why it took 3 months.
Mm-hmm. And what is the medium here? Is it paint or is it actual pencil?
All the line work is all pen and ink that I've drawn on bits of paper.
Yeah.
I've sketched it out first in pencil,
Okay.
then gone over it in ink, as you do when making comic books, traditionally.
Yeah.
And then I scanned it in and did the colouring via Photoshop.
Oh, right, okay, great.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Spiz.
Yeah, Spiz.
I've got 3 questions. Go for it.
I've got 3 questions. Who are you? You're very good at this.
His name's Simon.
It's very good. It's quite good. I think I like what he's doing.
You went from very good to quite good.
Yeah. No, it's better than I expected. But the other thing I wanted to mention was that you almost answered it. So when you did the colouring, because obviously I do drawing stuff as well. But do you have to leave it black and white to send it to the printer, or?
No, I did actually do a black and white version because I was planning on doing it black and white, and I thought, nah, the scenes where people die the blood needs to be red for it to pop, so I decided to just do the whole thing in colour.
Right.
But no, I did have to send colour off to the printers to do it. I had to send them basically the PDF of the thing, and then they printed it for me.
And the other one's completely facetious. Lidl or Tesco?
Little.
Anyone else?
I know you said you were going to give the comic away for free on the websites, but will you be setting up some sort of a Patreon page or something like that in the future to
Yes.
finance?
Definitely, I will be setting up a Patreon page. I've got a plan on how I'm going to reward people for all the tiers and whatnot.
What's the tiers?
I was thinking of doing, like, if you do like a small one-time donation, I'll give you some like posters and merch and a mug, maybe. And because of course we've got lots of different projects going on, I was going to let you. So if you're supporting us on Patreon because you like the comic, you can have comic book based merch. If you're supporting us on Patreon because of one of our web series, you can have some merch based on that. And I was thinking if you're like a regular supporter, then you just get a copy of the comic book for free, signed, whatnot, along with merch. And also, if you're into the film stuff we do, give you behind the scenes videos and stuff like that. That's kind of my general plan.
Wonderful. Who's next? Anyone else?
I can think of some more questions if you want.
Alright. Do you want to ask one? Dan?
It's not a question, but I would say more of a comment. When you were talking about you getting bored with it and your timescale getting slower and slower, I'd say that wasn't you getting bored, that was you actually creating a more realistic timetable for creating the work.
Maybe.
Anyone
I was
else?
bored as well.
Well, can we give a massive hand to Darcy? And please do buy the comic. I think, as I said earlier, when everything's online, I think it's really admirable that you've actually done this and printed it and you've created it as a physical thing. I think it's wonderful. And I also think we should support local artists. I'm a huge believer in that. So yeah, thank you all very much for coming. Do buy a coffee. Darcy.
Thank you, and thank you to Simon as well for doing this for me and to answer all these lovely questions.
Anytime, man.